ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. In the last reading class, we left our reading at page number 477. We shall continue today to read from there. In the last reading, we saw Sri Ramakrishna, his incidents in his life were being described by the author, and the last incident was that a father who had lost his son, he came with great grief in his heart. How Sri Ramakrishna assuaged that grief. So that incident had been recited, had been explained to us. Today we continue from where we left the last class at 477 page. We were amazed at this extraordinary behavior of the master and thought, is this the person whom we considered a short time ago to be hard-hearted and indifferent? One who is really great is not like the common run of people, even in small matters. His greatness is discernible in every action, great or small. Is this the same person whose heartbeat stopped a little while ago while he was experiencing ecstasy or the nearness of God? Is he the same person who, in sympathy with Mani Mohan's condition, is behaving like an ordinary man? He could have altogether dismissed the words of the old man, saying, "It is all a mere delusion, a trifling matter." The death of his son, he could have dismissed it like that. It is not that he could not have done so. Had he displayed his greatness that way, we would have felt that he might be a great spiritual teacher or anybody else, but that he was certainly not of this world. We would have felt that he had not the power to enter into the feelings of ordinary mortals, and would have said, we wonder how we could have remained indifferent to the play of Maya if we had fallen but once into the helpless condition into which we, weak human beings, have fallen owing to our attachment to wives and children. The very next moment, perhaps, a young man comes in a dejected mood and asks the master, "Sir, how can one be freed from lust? Passions and unhealthy emotions disturb the mind sometimes and make me restless in spite of me." The master, lust does not vanish till God is realized. So long as the body loss, a little of it continues even after the realization. But then it cannot raise its head. Do you think I myself am altogether free from it? At one time I thought I had conquered lust. When I was sitting under the Panchavati, such an onrush of lust came upon me that it seemed to be beyond my power of control. I then wept, rubbing my face against the dust on the ground, and said to the mother, "I have done a great wrong, mother. I shall never again harbor the idea that I have conquered the lust." It was then only that it vanished. Do you know, you people are now passing through a high tide of youth. This is why you cannot stop it. When a high tide comes, does it heed an embankment? It then swells up, breaks the embankment, and rushes forward. Then water stands as high as a bamboo over the paddy fields. But it is said that a mental sin is no sin in the Kali Yuga. Again, even if an undesirable feeling happens to arise once or twice in the mind, Why should you feel worried because of it? It is natural to the body. It sometimes comes and goes. Pay no more heed to it than to the bodily functions, the calls of nature. Do people feel worried because of such functions? Similarly, consider these feelings to be very trifling, unworthy of any attention, and do not think of them anymore. Moreover, pray to Him heartily, pray to God heartily, repeat continually the name of Hari and meditate on Him. That is the real cure. Do not take notice whether they come or go, whether lust comes and goes. Let it go on in its own way. You go on your own way of repeating the name of Hari. They will slowly come under your control. When we hold on to this repetition of the name of Hari with full heart, then slowly lust will diminish and almost disappear. The Master had become, as it were, a youth speaking to a youth. Exactly. No other friend, another youthful friend of him, could have given a better advice than this. And Sri Ramakrishna gives that youthful advice to another youth regarding a very important problem of all youth. In this connection, we remember Swami Yogananda was amongst the very few whom we knew to have conquered lust. One day, Yogananda asked the Master, Yogananda was the disciple of the Master, that very question at Dakshineshwar, about the question of lust, about the problem of lust. He was then young, about 14 or 15 years of age, and had been visiting the Master for a short time. A Hatha Yogi named Narayan was then living in a hut under the Panchavati and was attracting some people's curiosity by showing them the arts of Neti Dhoti. Neti Dhoti are some of the functions of the Hatha Yoga, by which you put a long cloth through your mouth into your stomach, then pull it out again with all the dirt and etc. inside the stomach. So, bringing out the dirt inside the body in such ways is called Neti Dhoti. Yogen said that he was also one of those people and thought on seeing those arts that lust perhaps would not vanish and God could not be realized unless those were practiced. So this yogin was also among those curious people. He was thinking, what Sri Ramakrishna has advised is all right. That alone would not be enough. You must practice this Neti Dhoti also. So he was thinking like that. He therefore hoped, when putting the question, that the Master would instruct him on some posture, that means asana, advise him to take some drugs like Haritaki, Ayurvedic drugs, or some other drug, or teach him some process of control of the vital force, pranayama. In answering my question, continued Yogen, the Master said, go on repeating the name of Hari and lust will vanish. Nothing more will be necessary. The answer was not at all to my liking. I said to myself, I see, he does not know any process, and that is why he has prescribed to me a useless something. Does lust vanish on repeating the name of the Hari? Very many people are doing it. Why does it not vanish in them? Another day, I came to the Kali temple, and instead of going straight to the Master, was standing near the Hatha Yogi at the Panchavati, listening eagerly to his conversation. When I saw that the Master himself had come suddenly there, and no sooner had he seen me than he called me, took me by the hand to his room, and said, Why did you go there to the Hatha Yogi? Don't do that, what he is showing. Your mind will stick only to the body if you learn those processes of Hatha Yoga. It will not your mind will not thirst for God. Your yearning for God will diminish. I thought, he is thus speaking to me, lest I should give up visiting him. See the way this young man is thinking, which is the natural young man's thoughts of today's youth also. Today's youth would have thought like that only. I always had a high notion of my intelligence, which is true of every youth anywhere. What a free rein I gave to the intellect, to my intellect. It did not then occur to me that my visits mattered so little to him. What would Sri Ramakrishna lose if this one man did not go to him? Ah, such a roguish and suspicious mind I had. But there is no limit to the grace of the Master. In spite of harboring such improper thoughts, I was given refuge and he had taken him as his disciple. All his responsibility upon himself. Then came the thought, why don't I do what he told me to do and see what happens? Thinking thus, I took the name of Hari with a concentrated mind. And as a matter of fact, I began directly to experience the result mentioned by the Master. That is, lust becoming less and less, almost disappearing. So he became a Kamajayi. Swami Vivekananda called him as a Kamajayi, one who has controlled lust perfectly. So lust could not do any harm to him. He would not feel lusty under any circumstances. That was the mastership of Yogananda over lust. Very many are the examples that can be cited of the Master's ability to grasp the mental condition and needs of all. We have already introduced Mani Malik of Sindhuriya party, the father who had lost his son. A relative of his, a woman devotee, frequently visited the Master. One day she came and said to him with great humility that when she sat down to meditate on God, worldly thoughts, the words of one, the face of another, etc., came into her mind and she could not attain to peace, restfulness. The Master at once understood the mood. He knew that she loved someone whose words and face came to her mind. He asked her affectionately, well, whose is the face that comes to your mind? Whom do you love? She replied that she loved a young nephew of hers whom she was bringing up. The Master said, very well, whatever you do for him, feeding, dressing, etc., do with the idea that he is Gopala, baby Krishna, Gopala. Take this attitude that God resides in him in the form of Gopala and that it is he whom you are feeding, dressing and serving. Why should you think that you are doing all this for a human being? As is your mood, so will be your gain. If you think you are feeding an ordinary child, your gain will be like an ordinary mother. If you think that you are feeding God in the form of a child, the result will be you will progress in spiritual life, have the vision of God. We are told that as the result of doing so, she made in a short time considerable spiritual progress, so that she attained even Bhava Samadhi, very high state of spiritual life. It is explicable that the Master could comprehend and know the mental states of men because he himself was a man. But one's surprise is unbounded when one thinks how the master could correctly know all the moods of women also, upon whom God has bestowed an extra capacity for experiencing tenderness, affection for children, etc. Women's nature is quite different from men, very difficult to comprehend from the ordinary intellect. So Sri Ramakrishna could know everything about the different moods of women also. The master, say his women devotees, did not usually seem to us to be a man at all. It seemed to us that he was one of us women. That is why we did not feel the slightest shyness or hesitation in his presence, as we do in the presence of ordinary men. Even if it came on rare occasions, we forgot it immediately and would express to him our feelings without any hesitation whatsoever. Did this happen because the master completely lost the consciousness? I am a male by constant concentration for a long time on the thought I am a woman friend or servant of Krishna, the Divine Lord. And by its realization, Yogi Patanjali says in his Yoga aphorisms, if the idea of doing injury to others completely vanishes from your mind, no one in the world, not even tigers and snakes, will injure you, not to speak of human beings. The very idea of doing injury to you will not cross their minds when they see you. You will have become almost like a personification of harmlessness, non-injury. Therefore, nobody can think of harming you in any way. This must be understood to be equally true of all other functions of the mind, such as lust, anger, etc. Many examples of this fact are found in the Puranas. That means completely lust has been conquered by one. Others also, when they go near him, they also feel free from lust. In one of the great observations of a disciple of Swami Vivekananda, Miss MacLeod, she used to say, my criterion of judging a great person is, if you go in his presence, you should also feel great. If you don't feel that, then that great man is not a really great man. Because greatness is there, it's bubbling with greatness. Whoever goes near him, he imparts that greatness into others also. So like that, one who is free from lust, he radiates that lustlessness into others also. So, many examples of this are found in the Puranas. One, however, will suffice here. This stainless young Shuka, free from Maya and always merged in God consciousness, was passing along, having renounced the world. And Vyasa, his old father, blinded by affection for his son, was running after him crying, where are you going, my son? Where are you going? He was leaving the home and going away into forest or some place where he will live like a monk. He did not want to live under the roof of any householder. So that's why father is crying, where are you going, where are you going? On their way, the celestial damsels were bathing in a lake after leaving their clothes on the bank. They felt no bashfulness or qualms in their minds when they saw Shuka, who was quite a young man, and went on bathing as before. But as soon as the old Vyasa arrived, going behind and calling his son, oh boy, where are you going away? All of them covered their bodies in great haste. Vyasa thought, this is very proper indeed. My youthful son passed by before and they did not even stir, but they feel very shy seeing me, an old man. Questioned about the reason, He asked them, what is the reason? You feel shy before me and not before my son. The ladies answered, Shuka is so pure that the only thought he always has in his mind is, I am the self of the universe. I am the Atman. This is always there in his mind. He doesn't feel he is a man at all. Therefore, we also felt we are not women. He is not at all conscious whether he has a man's or a woman's body. This was why shyness did not arise in our mind also when we saw him. But you are old, you have been much acquainted with the gestures, postures and glances of women and have extensively described their grace and beauty in your writings. You do not, like Shuka, look upon men and women as the self, and neither will you ever have the capacity to do so. That is why the idea of a male arose in our minds on seeing you, and simultaneously shyness also arose. This is an example where restlessness in a person induces restlessness in others also. That is how great saints and seers, when we associate ourselves with them, we get their greatness, their holiness, without much struggle. So they induced holiness into us. This very idea comes up in our mind in connection with the Master. His illuminating self-knowledge and his vision of the self in all, both male and female, kept the minds of all near him raised so high that the ideas such as I am a man, I am a woman, etc. would not usually cross their minds as long as they were with him. In his presence, they would never feel this idea of body. That is why, like men, women also felt no shyness in his presence. That is not all. That vision of the self in them in the company of the Master became so deep-rooted at that time that at his request they performed easily and without any hesitation those actions which they considered to be compromising and which they could not perform at the request of anyone else. At the Master's request, ladies of very respectable families who never travelled anywhere except by carriage or a palanquin walked on foot through the main road at daytime to the bank of the Ganga, took boats and travelled to the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar. What was more, they would perhaps go at the desire of the Master to the neighbouring market and make purchases for him and would return on foot to Calcutta at dusk. An example or two will make the matter clear. The reader should remember that in those days, such ladies would not come out in public. The ladies from the rich families, so they would not come out in the public at all. If ever they did, they come in palanquins or in horse carts, etc. Always, never on foot. But they did not bother if it was the case of Sri Ramakrishna. It was toward the end of 1884, another incident is being quoted here. The Holy Mother was then at her father's house at Jarambati. Balaram Basu went to Vrindavan with his father. With them went Rakhal, Brahmananda later on, and Gopal, later on he became Swami Advaitananda, and several other devotees, men and women. They all accompanied Mother to Vrindavan. A lady of a respectable family of Bagh Bazar, who had heard of the Master, had had a great desire to come and see him. She expressed this to a woman acquaintance of hers. The latter was told of this because she had been frequently visiting the Master for the past 2 years. A plan was fixed, and in the afternoon of the very next day, the two arrived at Dakshineshwar. They saw the door of the Master's room closed. They looked through the peepholes in the northern wall of the room and saw the master resting. Therefore, they went to the Nahabat, where the Holy Mother used to live, and waited there. The master got up a little later, and on opening the northern door, he found that they were sitting on the veranda of the first floor of the Nahabat. He called out to them, "Hello, come here." When the women devotees came and sat down, the master got down from his wooden cot and sat near the women devotee who was known to him. At that, she felt shy and was going to move away a little, when the master said, "Why this shyness? Realization of God is not possible as long as the three, shyness, aversion and fear, are there." Making a movement of his hand, "I am verily what you are, but showing the hairs of his chin, you feel shy because these are here, that I have beard, I am different from you, do you feel? Is it not so?" Saying so, he started immediately a conversation on God and gave them various instructions. The women devotees also forgot the distinction between man and woman and put questions and listened to answers without any hesitation whatsoever. When they took leave after a long conversation, the master said, "Come once a week. In the beginning, visits should be more frequent." Again, finding that they were poor, though belonging to respectable families, and thinking they could not always get carriage hire, the master added, 3 or 4 of you should join and make a boat while you come, sharing one boat, and walk to Baranagar and share a carriage there while you return home. It is needless to say that the women devotees acted accordingly since then. See, he was so free with women, and women were so free with him. Second example, another woman devotee said to us one day, there was nice sir means sweet cream, in the shop of Bhola, the famous sweet maker. As we knew that the master liked sir, we purchased a big piece. 5 of us then together hired a boat and arrived at Dakshineshwar without notice. But we were informed that the master had gone to Calcutta. We were at a loss to know what to do. There was brother Ramlal there, Sri Ramakrishna's nephew. Asked to which place in Calcutta the master had gone, he said that he had gone to the house of the teacher at Kombulutola. Hearing this, Ye's mother said, "I know that house. It is near my father's. Will you go there? Will you go? Come, let us go. What is good of waiting here?" They all agreed. We handed over the sweets to Brother Ramlal and went away saying, "Please give it to the master when he comes." We had already dismissed the boat, so we started on foot. But such was his will that hardly had we covered the short distance to Alambazar when an empty carriage returning to Calcutta was available. We hired the carriage and reached Shampukur. There was fresh trouble awaiting us. Ye's mother could not find out the house. After taking us from place to place, she stopped the carriage in front of her father's house and called a servant. He came with us and showed the house. Thus we succeeded, after all, in reaching the teacher's house. How can I blame Ye's mother either? She was 3 or 4 years younger than we. She was about 26 or 27 then, a mere daughter-in-law. She never came out to a road. Moreover, The house was in a lane, and how could she recognize it? So, this incident will continue. Today we shall stop here and we will continue in our next reading class. Niranjanam nityamanantarupam bhaktanukampadhrita vigraham vai Ishavataram parameshamidyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namamaha. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, the one with infinite forms, the one who has assumed a form for his devotees, the incarnate Supreme Soul, and the adorable Lord of all, we salute, bowing our heads before Thee.